land is your land. This land is my land. From California, well, to the New York Island. From the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters, I tell you, this land was made for you and me.
My name is Kim. I'll be your moderator today. Welcome to the second part of A Conversation with Revolutionaries. This is a series that we're doing, and this is the second meeting in that series. And, our theme for this one is working class unity possible, and why do we need it? Why do we need it? The League of Revolutionaries for a New America, that's who we are, and that's who is sponsoring this event, joins other revolutionaries who challenge the ruling class on the immorality of its ruthless devastation of the earth and life. We are a multiracial, multi-generational, and multi-gender working class organization dedicated to revolutionary education and struggle. We trace injustice to the capitalist system and seek to show how society's problems can be solved when it is reorganized along cooperative lines. Society must be reorganized so that the abundance made possible by science and technology benefits us all. A society that puts humanity and nature above profits. So we have just our agreements for today. To make this, a conversation and a welcoming space for all of us. Together, we are creating a culture and practice of inclusivity, diversity, respect, and love. Creating a community for study and struggle, discussing key questions and problem solving for immediate tasks, and long haul revolutionary struggle. We can all learn from each other, right? This is a safe space, a space of belonging, collective study and struggle. We want to hear everyone's voice. Quiet folks, new folks, step up and share, share your experiences, share your struggles, tell us what you're afraid of, right? The talkers, the ones that it comes easy to you, step back from talking a bit and step up for active listening. We will be employing a progressive stack. That is to make space for new voices and those that have not spoken. We'll call on new folks before those who have already had the chance to speak. To talk, please raise your hand, your electronic hand, or you can put your comment or question in the chat. We will be monitoring the chat, but we do want to hear it from everyone. Again, this is a conversation, right? So we want to be in conversation with everyone on this call. Each person will have 2 minutes to share your comments. We'll give you a gentle nudge, a gentle reminder, I might do this, to wrap up your thought. We are all learners and teachers. Bring your passion, your experience, your analysis, vision, and your strategy. Okay. All right. So the way that this our call today is organized, we will have I'll give you some context for this meeting today. And then our conversation will be centered around 3 questions. We have a presenter for each question that'll give a little context for it, and then we'll have our discussion. Okay. So I'm going to start it off for question 1 and give some context for today's meeting. The mass of workers are already a class against capital, but not yet for itself in the struggle, the mass becomes united and constitutes itself as a class for itself. The interests it defends become class interests. And that's a quote from Marx from Poverty of Philosophy in 1847. As a working class, we have to become conscious of ourselves as a class for ourselves. We are a multiracial, multinational, multigender, and multigenerational class, and our unity is essential for our struggle. Workers everywhere are awakening to the present danger, resisting, organizing, studying, striking, taking it to the streets, taking it to town halls, and taking it to the courts, etc. The next step is developing class consciousness, becoming a political force as united working class in our own interests against fascism and the capitalist system. Our survival as workers and humanity and protection of the earth depends on the working class defeating fascism in today's class war. This is the first step towards winning and holding our victory for the reconstruction of a cooperative and collective society and healing our planet. This transformation is necessary and possible. So, question one: why is a united working class the biggest threat to the system? And how do we grow that power? Why is a united working class the biggest threat to the system? And how do we grow that power? And that's class power. All right. I know that's a heavy question, but I know folks have some thoughts about it.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy.
This
Will
is
you
how
say the question one more time?
I sure can. Why is a united working class the biggest threat to the system? And how do we grow that power? How do we grow class power?
And that question is now in the chat.
All right. Okay. Miss Kim.
I'll just kick it off just to get it started with a couple of things. Just wanted to say that, yeah, I mean, the only reason Trump is our president now is because we do not have a united working class, for one thing. And a lot of the direction that our country is going in is because there's so many different ways that people are being confused by what's going on in society right now, that some people don't realize how much we have in common. Whereas the billionaires and the tech bros and the oligarchs, they know that they're one class. They know that they have something in common, and they're working together in a way to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. Whereas a lot of us, just regular people, the working class, are we look at our fellow working class members sometimes as our enemies. There's misguided anger, and there's a lot of pain that all working class members experience. And people, the fascists like Trump, um, turn that pain into anger against people that are actually in the same class. And if we realize we're all in this together, all of us need good schools, all of us need health care, all of us need places to live, and kind of acting on that, then we'd be a powerful political bloc. Way more. There's just so many more working class people than ruling class people or billionaires. So I'll just start with that.
Mhm. Thank you. Yeah, I think that we also have to recognize, the different tools that the ruling class has used to keep us divided and keep us
Mhm.
fearful. There's a lot of fear, that people are experiencing. I mean, and I think everyone, if you haven't been impacted directly, which we all are being impacted directly by what's happening, someone that's been impacted. There's, the ICE raids that are happening and people just kind of being disappeared around. My brother, he coaches football for a local high school here in Northern California, and one of his students, his father has been detained, arrested and detained. So it's touching everyone. But how do we turn that into developing class unity? How do we, relate and connect with people that, despite, what their beliefs are, despite who they voted for, which is something I think that people also have to kind of get past, right? Um, how do we connect with them to unite?
Yeah, yeah. I see that Fatima Garcia put a comment in the chat because we can withhold our labor. And I'm wondering if you might want to say a little bit more about that and why you decided to put that in the chat. Fatima, I don't know.
Sure. Hi,
Hey,
everyone.
hi.
Uh, to add to that, when we talk about workers and just people making this system run, it is through uh, our labor that's controlled by the employer. And when workers are united, they're able to shut down these systems that are in place, whether it be restaurants, groceries, agriculture, things that are fundamental to this capitalist system to keep running. And so when we are organized and work as a united front for all workers, regardless of their immigration status, and create a lens of a worldwide solidarity, because we know that the corporations that are exploiting workers here in the United States are the same corporations that are exploiting people on a worldwide level. And creating that conscience in workers really does uh, give a visual of the power that is tangible within the working class.
Thank
Yes,
you. Yeah.
yes, thank you.
So I know that there are other people who are part of the labor movement, the growing labor movement today. And I'm wondering if any of you all would like to speak to that and sort of how this is playing out in your own workplaces or contexts. Huh?
Peter.
Well, I'm retired, so I'm not technically employed today, but I note that the president of the SEIU union just got beaten up and arrested by ICE agents. That's pretty significant.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of that, shows that there's a possibility that the labor movement is going to polarize around these issues because a lot of it has not been very, very upstanding yet. Stopping there, I'll pass.
Okay, anyone else?
I think I'd like to highlight on that. I come from labor. I actually worked at SEIU USWW with
Mm,
David Huerta when I was there. And the theatrical and co-oping of unions is real in the United States. And I think some people shy away or are afraid because of retaliation of being um, fired, blacklisted, all kinds of repressions that happen when you are
mhm,
a whistleblower, I guess,
mm,
to describe it. And it is very interesting because right now you see labor, all of the federations on a national level demanding the release of David Huerta. He's still in custody. He was able to seek medical attention, but they are holding him um, they're still holding him in custody. And to see the amount of labor really polarized, like Peter said, because again, usually when unions are negotiating contracts, and I'm not sure how many other people are aware of this, but particularly for SEIU, it's a theatrical thing where they have pre-negotiations and meetings with law enforcement to act like they're really arresting people in their civil disobedience. And you have people in comments, right, that are reporting this incident saying, oh, is this true, is this not? They're not sure if it's staged or not, but I've confirmed that this has not been a staged action, and that David really is living what the janitors that he represents and a lot of the essential undocumented workers in the state live every day. And so this is going to be an interesting turn for labor, at least in California, and we'll see if it has a domino effect across the nation.
Yes, thank you. And what she said is correct. I mean, it's I think organized labor is it's just one part of that equation. And over the last several decades, as long I've been in organized labor for the better part of 20 plus years, not to go into too many of them years, but um they have not done a good job of really connecting with community. Some, bargaining units, some individual locals do a little bit better, but widespread, not too much. And so and you do see the polarization that's happening with organized labor. But, you know, that's one thing that we need to, consider, but organize around, because we all need to come together. Anyone else? Doyle.
Sorry, took me a moment to turn off the mute. I'm thinking about a little bit about the workers' councils that were in Russia before 1917. And the reason I'm thinking about that is because when I look at a Zoom call like this, where we have many multiple voices put together like this, that this is an important way to think about, pulling all workers together. So tools like this should belong to all of us. They don't. They belong to the monopolies. But tools like this are where our work could be going. That is, when people are talking about their community, like where I live, you can't get the monopoly resources can't talk about my city. You can ask it questions, but it doesn't know. And it's a job of our people to talk about where we're at, our neighborhoods, our communities, our relationships, and stuff like that. That kind of work is empty here in the United States. People feel isolated. And so using tools like this, in my view, is how you build a national movement.
Mhm. Very good. Any other thoughts? Laura.
See if can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Following on the theme of labor, a couple of things. I was listening to KPFA yesterday about the ICE raids in Los Angeles. And it sounded to me, well, they said that they were raiding, see, now I've forgotten a bit, but I remember one of the places they were raiding warehouses where immigrant workers were employed. And there was this implied threat that, anybody who employs these people are going to get fined or sanctioned in some way. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about how that's linked to, in some ways, it should be as kind of threatening as tariffs, because if you take away the workers that are really responsible for getting goods out there, that's going to be an effect that is going to be felt, widespread. And so it just occurs to me that that's an organizing area where, I don't know, union people can link up with these workers, or at least put out the message that we have to kind of defend everybody that's doing a job, or we have to organize strikes. This idea of organizing strikes in certain sectors to show people how important all workers are, undocumented or otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with Kim that the way labor unions function sometimes politically
Mm-hmm.
is not very useful. I know even in the last election, our firefighters, who are very strong working class people in our little town of Alameda and support all of, the most progressive activists, they were forced to endorse some people we didn't like because the Central Labor Council wanted to endorse them. And they felt they had to support the Central Labor Council and not what was best in our town.
Mm-hmm.
So those are two things.
Yes, very good. Peggy.
So I was just thinking of it. Unfortunately, I can think of just so many ways that we're not all the examples of division. Just they're so. Anyway, I can think of more. Unfortunately, right now, think of more examples of division than unity. But also, this. For instance, I'm in an area where there's a huge number of immigrants, and the immigrant groups are actually pitted against one another, and also I know in a certain healthcare field, there's a lot of division among people among unions wanting to represent the same purses, same people, same newsletter, the same anyway. But also, I'm responsible for a couple of newsletters of a pretty large, MailChimp email blast. And I always strive in those newsletters to emphasize the unity and show the commonalities of what everybody is experiencing. And I think it's just, where you are, you have to look at what are the divisions and what are the ways to bring people together. If it's to show the common problems, to highlight the successes that each group is having. So anyway, I'm just going to stop here.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kathleen.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Can I just do a time check? So we only have about 6 minutes for this question, but whoever doesn't have a chance to talk can talk when we get to question 2. Just so keep your hands up.
Yep. Thank you. Kathleen.
Well, thank you. Well, I think we need to make it very clear that our working class is very broad and diverse and riven by white supremacy and reactivating Jim Crow 2.0, and those attacks divide the class, but they also well, they deprive it of powers, but they also feed into that history. So our class is very complex. It goes from absolutely destitute, unhoused folks to now federal workers who may own houses and have some wealth, but are ultimately dependent on their work and don't exploit it. So I think whenever we talk about the class, we want to say we're not reducing this to class. So I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Steve.
Good discussion and good topic. I think we find ourselves in a unique moment in U.S. history. We're clearly seeing serious fascism beginning to really take control of political power. And it's drawing everybody into not so much an economic discussion, but a political discussion of how is it that all of a sudden somebody who's totally unelected, totally unresponsible to anything, starts laying off hundreds of thousands of people. It's more than an economic issue. It's an issue of political control and the power to do that. And we're getting some hard lessons in this one. Historically, the working classes often had economic responses to capitalist exploitation, but it has not always had a organized political response. But ultimately, it's the political response that changes the power relationships.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to take one more before we introduce a second question, but keep your hands up because you can speak on the first one or bring in the second one as you like. Fatima.
Yeah, just quickly to add to that, I do see the great division between, I feel like a lot of times labor does focus on low wage workers and service workers and forgets about the government workers. My son just currently got hired with FEMA as a firefighter, and the discrepancies and the abuse and the exploitation is just as real that I see because I work with low wage workers. But this is a new universe for me because my son is introducing me to it, but the same things are happening. And I feel like because you are at the control of an employer, and when we talk about government workers, they're at the control of the government. And so it comes a little, there's more intimidation, I feel, in a sense. And also going back to the Jim Crow era, this is why it's so important that we have to denounce and go against any type of guest worker program, H2A, H2B, because what they're doing right now, they know that undocumented labor is a huge chunk of the United States economy worldwide. And what they're going to do now that there's a shortage on workers, they're going to get ready to implement the H2A, H2B, and now there's a new guest worker program that is going to take over the industry, the restaurant industry, the service industries, and so that's something that we should continue to create conscience and learn about, because it's so important.
Very good. Okay, so we're about at time for the first question. We're going to go ahead, everybody keep their hands up. We're going to introduce the second question and then continue our discussion. Okay, so I'm going to kick it over to Joyce, who's going to read our next question and give a little context.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, so the second question is, how do we go from resisting what's wrong to fighting against fascism and winning? Just open it up. Our country's facing a crisis economically, morally, socially, and politically. One thing is for sure, we can't fight this out without getting our hands on the systemic conditions of our exploitation and oppression. This is a big thing and can feel overwhelming. So we need a collective vision of where we're going and how we're going to get there. The owners of corporate power rely on war and fascism because they can't meet the needs of most of us anymore. Let's not forget, we're not just responding to fascism. Fascism itself is a response to people fighting for rights and further democratization of government. Today, survival and transformation go hand in hand, because the fight against fascism is a fight for something. Fascism always depends on some form of slavery, whether it's forced labor, low wages, or human trafficking. For many, the current reality is either already intolerable or untenable.
Mhm.
In this context, a global dispossessed class has to make concrete demands on its governments to provide for basic needs without money or profit. So winning means realizing social transformation as we fight for survival. That means moving past systems built on profit and private property and towards ones built on cooperation and care. Pledges to return to some mythical golden past or some new deal between capital and labor represent little more than blatant, disingenuous misdirection and fake patriotism. Here's what we need to ask. How do we stay grounded in the growing number of people who can't survive under this system and help them understand what they need to do to get the power to change it? Because once our class sees itself as a force, not just socially, but politically, we can start to challenge and abolish the power relations that hold all of society back. So again, we're asking the question, how do we go from resisting what's wrong to fighting what's wrong to fighting against fascism and winning?
Okay. All right. Give us some nuggets of wisdom, Jerome.
I will do my best, especially with this transition. So let me just say one thing about the second question, and then I'll say one thing about the first question.
Mhm.
The second question really is, how do we go from the defensive to the offensive? And the very first step in going to the offensive is to develop a vision of what we're fighting for. Because the offense have got to be anchored by our demands to get what we actually need to ensure that not only do we survive, that the planet survive, but we can thrive and build a society that is cooperative and not competitive and deadly like this one. So we got to have a vision, because we talk too much about what's wrong.
Mhm.
We can't stop talking about what's wrong, but we got to have a sense of what we're fighting for so that the working class, can contribute what they think we're fighting for, and we can come up with a critical mass of working class folks that is looking and fighting in the same direction. So that's the first step. And now on the first question, I think the one thing that didn't get answered was why is a united working class such a threat to the system?
Mhm.
And I think it's important that, the system that we're talking about, of course, is capitalism.
Mhm.
And in order for capitalism to work, for it to function, for it to provide the environment for the capitalists to maximize their profit, they got to have a grouping of people that not only produce the goods and services, but also deliver them, the production and delivery of the goods and services that we produce. And if we can, in a unified way, stop our production and our distribution, we can shut down the system and demand changes that you cannot demand otherwise. Or you could demand it otherwise, but they would be feasible if we can shut down the system and bring the capitalist to its knees. Because if we shut out their profits, then, that's the one thing that they cannot afford to give up is their profits and an ever expanding amount of profits. So that's why they're so scared that if we get united, we can do that. And that makes us a serious threat. As a matter of fact, I think that the working class is the only section of society that can successfully overthrow capitalism and establish a system that is not a cooperative, a cooperative system that we can all live in and thrive in.
Mhm.
Pass.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jerome. So next is Sarita. You're on mute still.
Mute. He's
There.
gone.
There you go.
Okay. In reference to the first question, I just want to bring into the conversation the international working class. and that I do a lot of work around the whole thing around Palestine, and I'm starting to realize that people are referring or thinking about Palestine and the Palestinians as an oppressed people, but they are part of the working class.
Mhm.
And so one thing is by raising consciousness about their position in the working class, it will help raise consciousness around for all the people who are involved in this to feel that we're an international working class.
Yes. Thank you. Doyle.
So we were in my place where I'm living here in Alameda, California. We were having a conversation around the kitchen table about the ICE raids. And I mentioned that they were happening in San Diego and Minneapolis and, getting a lot of media coverage. And basically that the people in the neighborhoods came out to protest against that. And what I wanted to bring out is I believe that when workers are organized and have discipline, this is an important feature of doing protest. So one of the people that at the kitchen table was mentioning that Trump's strategy is to use martial law, and so they'll use protest as an excuse for using military force. Well, the reason I'm saying discipline is really important is that we need to be able to, when we address things like this as forcefully as we can, to do it in a way that protects us as well as fights for us. And that's what they're looking for, is to isolate and attack us as individuals or as scapegoated groups. But together, that's where our power is. That's it for me.
Thank you. Peter.
Yeah, I am loving this conversation. I'm really appreciating people's comments, and I'm looking forward to the folks who have not spoken up yet, because your ideas are just as good. I want to go back to this first question for a moment, because I think we often forget that the United Working Class was such a threat that before 1700, before we were even thinking about being a nation, dividing the working class was an essential step in strategy of control by our rulers. They had white and black servants and slaves who were rebelling together, and they realized with Bacon's Rebellion and others that they had to put a stop to this. And it's been an incredibly successful strategy of controlling all of us. It has been more brutal for some sections than others. And we are deeply, deeply scarred by it. So part of coming together means opening up and talking about these wounds and scars that we all bear, and so that we can heal ourselves together and heal these divisions so that we can move together. And wrapping up, when we talk about going from resisting to attacking the system, uh, resisting slavery was one thing. Attacking slavery meant planning and organizing to take property away from the slave owners. And that's what it means today, too. It's going to be a long process, but that's what our goal is, our implied goal is, in order to free all of us, including the Palestinians and the folks in Eastern Africa and all these other places where folks are struggling so much. I'll stop there.
Yes, very good conversation. I had some thoughts myself too on, just a couple of things. I mean, the question is, how do we go from resisting what's wrong to fighting against fascism and winning? And one of the things that I was able to write down from Jerome's comments was, that we have to develop a vision of what we are fighting for. And it doesn't have to be everything all at once. It could be something specific. One of the things that is in this horrible bill that they're trying to move through Congress is there's a whole bunch of horribleness in it. But one of the things that struck me is that they want a prohibition from the states to be able to regulate AI. You know, recognizing that AI is, you know, taking over a lot of different elements, not only in, you know, workers and, you know, thought workers, people that develop the software. It's going to be labor replacing, but in that, it can also be used for the benefit of society, right? But they want to be able to use it as an element of control, and they want to be able to use it as something that can guarantee and bring in profit. So, what if there was a mass of maybe tech workers that, you know, withheld their labor in opposition to that? Also, Jerome talked about not only stopping our production, but our distribution. We don't really produce much here in the United States anymore. It's global. And China, you know, gave Trump a very big lesson of that, you know, they cannot just bring manufacturing back to the United States. That ship has sailed. But the distribution, though, of these goods, you know, just imagine if, you know, all of the Amazon workers just took a few days off from delivering our convenience stuff, you know, throughout the country. That would get their attention. Not only their attention, but move in the way, you know, you can't suppress people that are just not distributing your product, right? So there's ways to do this protest without, you know, experiencing the overt oppression from the state, but it's something that we have to, you know, work to organize and also raise the consciousness of the people that are the workers that are directly involved in the corporations in enabling their ability to continue their profit. Anyone else?
Yeah. So we've noticed that Sarah has put a lot in the chat and Rita has put a bit in the chat and wanted to see if you all wanted to share that out loud briefly and really invite folk who haven't spoken, might be new to the space, to just share. So Sarah? Maybe Sarah can't talk. And I see Jerome's hand is back up.
Okay.
Does Sarah want to say anything? If she doesn't, then let's see if Rita wants to say anything.
I see Rita. Miss Rita. Go ahead, Miss Rita.
Hey, y'all. Thanks so much. Great conversation. I just wanted to comment a little bit on what Kimberly was just saying. I mean, one of the things that I don't think a lot of people are necessarily aware of is that there is a piece in this big budget bill that prevents any regulation of artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is based on the gathering of big data, which holds all of the biases that are intentionally infused in our society, whether it's white supremacy, male supremacy, xenophobia, all of those things. So the question of the use of artificial intelligence for both surveillance and control becomes makes our task kind of urgent. And so the other side of that, to my way of thinking, is that, you know, scientists and academics are also on the move. And I think that some of our responsibility is to let them know that they're also a part of this working class, right? That they have an important role to play, not only potentially in terms of withholding their labor, but also in terms of communicating a lot of the truths of science. For example, certainly with the collapse the Department of Health and Human Services under RFK, we're not getting any accurate information about what's happening to our public health, right? We're not getting any of that. So part of this ability, I think, to build working class unity also means gathering together forces that can help to counter the lies, the misinformation, the lack of scientific honest scientific exploration that could really benefit our people. And I have a lot of optimism because a lot of people are actually moving toward that direction. Not only a formation of mutual aid, but actually beginning to understand the political ramifications of what it is we're doing and putting forth a vision of what's not only possible, but now actually necessary. And that's all I wanted to say.
Very good. Thank you, Rita. Monica.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here. So this idea of expectations is a critical part of a conversation. So the idea that fascism, for a lot of folks, historically, they feel doesn't meet their expectations. They've given up on democracy because it's too complicated, too complex. And sometimes the idea of reductionism is really important to folks. I don't have to think this is what it is. But that comes in against the expectations of healthcare, expectations that if I retire, I'll actually have something to live on. So as a veteran, and we have many different kinds of veterans. My God, we have Trump-supported veterans as well as Biden-supported veterans, socialist. But what brings us all together is when they say the VA is going to lose 15,000 workers. All of a sudden, we're all on the same sheet of music. Because the VA, even the education department, represents particular expectations that we all have, regardless of political perspectives. The other part is, and it's something I've thought about, like, this is our house too. So the right wing is really good at saying, this is our house, we're gonna fight for our house, and you guys are just interlopers. This is not your house. So so that has to be shifted to say, no, this is our house. We built this house. Instead of allowing the right wing and those folks who really don't care about us to take that narrative. And I think the Poor Votes campaign and like us here, we're trying to take back that narrative that this is our house and this is our need. And part of that, and this is my last part, is embracing AI. Yes, they say that they don't want to mess with AI for 10 years or whatever. But we can also take hold of AI for our own use, and not say we can't use that for X, Y, and Z. We need to master AI as much as possible, just as they are. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to end this question with Ms. Nell, and we'll go into question 3.
Great. Thanks so much, everybody. Great conversation. Thanks for inviting me. So I have a couple of thoughts about the question of how to grow our power. And so some of the organizing that I've done has been among no-wage workers. Right.
Yeah.
And there's been an ongoing struggle. Johnny Tillman, I'm here on my computer, so I'm like looking up Johnny Tillman, and I'm trying to figure out there are some other key figures, who said the work we're doing right now is work, of reproducing the whole population of the whole globe is work and deserves to be recognized as that. And women should not be living in poverty. So I wanted to just raise that because that's our internal work is how to figure out how to address that, because that division leaves all of us less powerful than we could otherwise be. I would also include unhoused folks, right? The National Union of the Homeless that's building a movement using the law. And again, workers. I mean, if anybody has ever been homeless, you know how much work it is to survive. And so I would, just try to think about people who we get separated from based on who gets a check and who doesn't and for what. So thanks so much for that.
Very good. Okay. Great conversation. Jerome, I got you on stack. We're going to read the third question and then go right into your comments. So I'm going to hand that over to Ms. Shanice for question 3.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I am excited to pose this question out. And I think that during our discussion, we have collectively touched on solutions to question 3. But I'm going to pose it right now. And that is, what's stopping us from taking collective action? And how do we remove those roadblocks? And for a little bit of context, I took a historical view and was thinking that throughout history, collective action has played a pivotal role in driving social change, from the labor movements and anti-colonial uprisings to civil rights struggles and democratic revolutions. However, such unification has often faced persistent roadblocks. In many cases, ruling powers have deliberately sown division to prevent unified resistance, using tactics like racial segregation, class stratification, or religious polarization. For example, colonial governments frequently implemented divide and rule strategies to weaken indigenous solidarity. Similarly, in industrial societies, elite interests often pitted workers against each other along ethnic or gender lines to undermine labor unions. Moreover, centralized power structures, surveillance, and violence have historically been used to suppress organizing efforts, from the suppression of peasant revolts in medieval Europe to the targeting of civil rights activists in the 20th century. Ideological manipulation through like propaganda, nationalism, or disinformation has also fragmented potential coalitions by shifting blame away from systems and onto marginalized groups. So I pose the question again, what's stopping us from taking collective action, and how do we remove those roadblocks?
Okay. That's a great question. Jerome.
Yes, it is a great question, but I'm going to start with the other question. The last question. Because I think it's important that we understand what we're up against. No one talked about fascism from the standpoint of what it is that we've got to stop. And because if we don't understand what it is, we might be trying to stop the wrong thing. Fascism must take over every apparatus of the present state apparatus. Now, a lot of times when we talk about the state apparatus, we never really get into what all that encompasses. But the state apparatus encompasses our health, our education, everything that influences how people think. A lot of people are curious of why they're attacking Harvard. Well, they're not attacking Harvard just because they're Harvard. They're attacking Harvard because they got to break down the education system in order to transform it into a fascist apparatus. And that's what they're doing to every, that's why they're attacking education. That's why they're attacking the actual State Department, because in order for fascism to build a fascist state, it must destroy the so-called liberal bourgeois state that we've been living under for the last period of time. And that's exactly what we're witnessing right now. So now that's the reality of it, but there's some side effects. One of the side effects is that now we have a broad section of the working class that is in motion. They have pushed the federal workers into motion. They have pushed the scientists into motion, and the point that I really wanted to make about this question of how do we, what's stopping us from being organized and how do we get past it, is that first of all, what's stopping us is what the last speaker just said, divide and conquer. And they divide us on every level, and we all know that. But what they're doing now is pushing so many people into the category of others, and making them have to fight that we can start really the process of uniting because we're all under attack. And the only way that we can survive is if we get a critical mass of workers united. And I keep saying critical mass because, and this will be my last point, you can't unite the working class all at once. You got to start somewhere. And the 2 points that I think we have to hold on to for our starting or I'm sure most of us is already deeply involved in it, but we gotta put pressure on those folks who are in motion, because if they're in motion, they're open for discussion. They're open for new ideas. It's time for they're open for class consciousness. So the sections of the class that are in motion, and then when you look at the sections of the class that are in motion, I think you got to look at who are the most exploited and oppressed sections of those in motion. Like the homeless, like the the people that's got a day-to-day employment situation, the people that make little or no money. So those two things, I think, is where we start this process of overcoming the divide and conquer that is preventing us from uniting at least that critical mass. Pass.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Doyle.
Thank you. So I'm addressing what to do, and I'm sort of inspired by the question of AI. So we're actually talking a little bit about that here. So there's two tools of AI that are free that I've been using a little bit. One is called Gemini, and the other is DeepSeek. DeepSeek is a Chinese free tool, and China's emphasized that they're going to use these tools in their society. They're building them, and they're going to go past us because of the monopoly issues in the United States. The point about these tools is that it allows us to say, for example, automatically correct DeepSeek. You automatically can translate. So somebody could come in here who doesn't know English and be able to understand what we're saying so that we can lower the barrier between us. Well, this is part of what this tool does. The second part about this is I ask questions and it goes through all the internet and comes up with something. So what I'm trying to get across is that for many of us in the working class, we're inarticulate. We need practice in not just talking to each other, but to ask questions of each other about what we're going against. So if we were to do this, if you take these monopoly tools and you ask them about where you live, it can't answer you. And that's the work that we can be doing, which is each of us begin to talk about where we live and what we need and what we're going to do. And just by doing that, we're educating working people of all kinds about what this big community that we're going to be building. And I don't think that's going to be easy because they're not going to allow us to use the tools very much. But I'm just talking about a vision of what organizing might be like ahead. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Shanice.
Just wanted to lower my hand. So I wanted to actually give a response to the very own question that I posed, and that's because I see it happening around us so much, and that is a misinformation. That is media manipulation and political polarization and like lack of the trust in institutions or each other, and it weakens our ability to align on the real facts and goals. And so I think that one of the things that we can do is invest in local independent media and digital literacy and create spaces for real dialogue like we're doing now, not just online but also in person.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's one way to eliminate the roadblocks. Peter.
Actually, why don't you take Don first? I've spoken.
Okay. Don.
This is on the topic of unity and power. Like when I think of uniting the working class, for some reason I gravitate to thinking about the poor working class, like the service workers and laborers and veterans. And in terms of sheer numbers, I think it would be maybe easier for the poor working class to unite because they have this common experience and struggle. And in sheer numbers, that's really good because there is power in those numbers, but also like there's power in money, and there's a whole bunch of working class that are kind of rich. I mean, they're not struggling financially like at this point in time. I've heard people use Marxist terminology, and I googled this term, petite bourgeoisie. They're like the rich working class, and they want to become the oligarchs, and identify on like material and consumerism and stuff like that and status. But I think people are talking about AI might displace a lot of those people, and then they're going to become the working class, not making so much money. Maybe I don't know, maybe those people voted for Trump. I'm not sure, but I think it will make just the working class bigger, between poor working class and uniting with the people that used to be these poor, petite bourgeoisie people who are going to start struggling now too. I think maybe it might expedite this growth. And I'm not going to say those people will have money because they've probably accumulated some wealth, but not a lot of wealth. Maybe when that's all exhausted, then they'll feel like they're working class.
Yes. Very good. Okay. Ashe is next on stack.
Hello. I'm very nervous to speak, so I'm just gonna start by saying that so everybody knows that. I have been thinking a lot about, I think, what Shanice said, and also when Rita said that fascism for a lot of people does meet their expectations. That's something I've also been thinking about because it meets their expectations, but it also creates their expectations. And this like general mistrust that I think is born out of everybody's, very real but very individualized experience of, oppression. I think it gets sort of intercepted and molded into participation in conspiracy or fringe movements or just complete apathy and individualism. And I feel like particularly like our information systems are so disrupted and co-opted and like completely confusing. And I think AI is a big concern to me because, you know, it's so fast. People use it very commonly, and now more and more for school assignments, people are having their essays completely written by AI. And, you know, the effect of this is that people are even more not even kind of trying to analyze or you know, think through their own experience in life. And I guess I feel like there needs to be, I guess to say, I feel like people struggle to meet ideologically because they also struggle to meet physically, you know, to really touch the information with their hands and also meet people and like actually discuss in that way. And I think I uh, have been thinking a lot about how to create more like social infrastructure and public spaces that you know people can commune at and get real help um, at. Okay.
Very good. Very good. I do think that there is a concerted effort to dumb down the working class, but we have to seize these tools, right? Not only to benefit us, but to change the way that the fascists are trying to attack us. Peter.
Yeah, thank you. And Aisha, thank you for that. That was really beautiful. Um, One of the things that I see about at least the way AI, and my family jokes that that's what I have is artificial intelligence. Uh, One of the ways it's used by our masters, you're right, is to dumb us down and to limit our thinking. And as a teacher, I had to do two things in my classes. I found one, I had to convince students that they were not there to compete with each other, that we help each other and we all grow better that way. And that really worked. And the other was to show them, and this was machine shop. So they actually had to make precision parts. And one of the first things I said, you're going to be tempted, you're going to be really frustrated and tempted to give up and maybe find a part that's good and present it as something you made. But when you get out there in the real world, you actually have to be able to make stuff and it has to work. And you can't fake that and you can't ask someone else to do that for you. So, but the main thing I wanted to say is about the third question, how do we remove these roadblocks? One is by actually consciously and openly caring for each other and taking care of each other, just as an attitude. But I think another thing is recognizing that all the things we need are linked together. Okay, you've got a lot of people who voted MAGA whose Medicare, whose Medicaid is being cut right now, not suggested in real life. They hate that because their mom or their daughter or their nephew can't get health care and they're angry about that and they're showing it. And we can't deal with cancer unless we deal with the toxics that are in our food. We can't deal with the dead zone at the mouth of the Mississippi River unless we make food production and agriculture public and not factory farming, which uses all kinds of toxic chemicals. I still have people ask me, what does organic food mean? And I just say, it's food without poisons. It's food the way your great grandma and grandpa grew it, not the way the oil and chemical companies grow it. So I'll stop there, but these are all linked together and when we begin dealing with them, we start creating positive feedback loops that feed each other. And they all involve taking over these things and making them public.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. Hey, Sue.
I might be lagging on the question because my phone died, but I was thinking of a concrete example about how to fight fascism and how to unite. And I've been grappling with this question a lot, even in my local. I'm also a leader in my higher ed union. We're a small union of 5,000. and they haven't moved very far. And really, they pretty much put it on me to have know your rights educationals, which is great, but that's not enough. That's not enough to have a united front against fascism. But the concrete example that I was thinking of happened just last week, where ICE was, coming to our neighborhoods in Pilsen and Little Village, and we have progressive alders here. They're not united within themselves, but we got socialist progressive alders, and these politicians got together with people to try to fight ICE. And that to me was even though they may not agree on every issue, that they came together. Um, there were 20 people that were arrested. They weren't successful, but that to me was something. It was something we hadn't seen before here. At least not I hadn't seen it. I've been here since 2004. So that to me was a beautiful expression, and I hope they build from that and are more successful. I know people in California are dealing better with ICE, but we're learning.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So I did want to mention, if anyone that needs to leave early, our evaluation for this event has been dropped in the chat. So please, take a moment to fill it out and submit it. And I will go to the next participant, Ms. Kim.
Unmute.
Yes, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Okay. Yeah, and then we'll get to Desiree.
Sorry about that. Took me a while. So I just wanted to kind of follow up on well, thank everybody for being here today and for trying to grapple with these things. I just feel good about us talking together. I wanted to follow up on what Don had mentioned about kind of what I would call more privileged sectors of the working class, and helping them see, one, that they are part of the working class. And I mean, we just have to find the things that are in common, which are so many things. And like Peter said, they're all connected. But I'll say Medicaid or Social Security is one. That's going to affect people of all so-called economic backgrounds. And then public education. I've had some discussion. So we have to find things that touch a lot of people of all parts of the working class, from the most dispossessed to the more privileged ones. Because, like Don and others mentioned, those privileged workers are getting kicked out the system too by AI, and they're on their way out. I'm a professor too, and I mean, I'm seeing how fast things are changing. But I know at one time, for example, I had a conversation with a guy about education, and he was talking about how he was sending his kids to private school, and so many uh you know me- parts of the working class who have a little bit more money do send their kids to private school, because our public schools are falling apart in most places. And so I just said to him, like, why should you have to pay to get a good education for your children? We have public schools. Shouldn't they provide quality education for all kids? And he had never, I'm sure, I don't know if he had never thought about it, but he definitely looked at me in a curious way and was like, that's true. But the more we can talk about how public ownership, in a way that the government is organized to do what the people need, all people, because we really do have the same needs. Some of us just don't have them met at all, and some of them are on our way to not having them met. And the last thing to say, in addition to trying to reach all parts of the working class and help them see what they have in common, healthcare in general too, like the Luigi thing has really gotten a lot of people waking up. But I wanted to say about the people in places that did vote for Trump, the rural areas or the parts of the South or the Midwest and things like that, where a lot of us are not located. Some of us are, but how are we going to reach? Some of us are in the cities, where there's a lot more kind of consciousness and at least progressive ideas. So, how are we going to reach the people in the places where the ruling class has been really successful in teaching them that it's the immigrants and the Black people are the reason that they don't have what they need, rather than the billionaires controlling the policies of our country and controlling their jobs. So I think that'll be really important to try to figure out, how do we reach that group? Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very important. So Miss Desiree.
Hi, thank you. I know I got on a little late, but I've been listening, and I really admire and respect what everyone has to say. You may not agree with me on what I'm about to say is that I think that first of all, I agree with everyone, but I think right now the primary thing that everybody should be doing is thinking strategy. It's too late. We lost. It's too late. So now that we're on the fence, how do we become on the offensive? The only game right now is we need to stop focusing that, oh, Trump is to blame on everything. No, he's not. What he did is he's using the pathway for which previous administrations set up for him. So what is the one way we can topple him is by breaking the house of cards under him, and that's Congress. We need to start looking at who's running in our districts, who hasn't been doing their job, who's a failed Democrat, who has failed us, what Republican has gotten away with barely winning, but now today his own constituents are going after him. We need to gravitate to that group, not the group that is so much is in favor with us, but with the group that says, you know, we have something in common. And you know, I'm getting behind this one guy. Even if it's an independent, it may not be the right Democrat. The point is that we have to start strategizing how we're going to reach people in our districts and even bundle up. 2006 and 2008 is called a wild card in the voting system. Why? Because let's face it, what they're doing is an elimination process across the board. You get creative on it, that's the elimination. Okay, we don't have to go into details. So how do we prevent that? By strategically breaking Congress and removing people who should not be there. We already suspected that this last election was stolen from us. But what's unique about 26 and 28 is a lot of congressional seats are going to be coming up. Even in our own states, various seats. We need to pay attention to that. I for one, even though I'm real angry with the Democratic Party, I am going to make sure that everybody in my district who is a Republican or a Democrat voting with these rats, estos ratas, that we are going to get them out of office. That's the primary thing. Once we do that, then we can start talking about all the federal money and the program money that has been cut and that we want it back. Because what is happening is now this we all know this is a class war, but now white poor America is saying you lied to us. One, we do have something in common with black and brown. We're poor too. But guess what? We've been poorer because in this state, you haven't been accepting state and federal matching funds. But now you're taking away medical on wheels. Now we don't have medical and dental and eye care on wheels that comes through once a year. But you want to pump us up with lots of drugs? And they're saying, no, we cannot sustain this anymore because they're coming to understand that this is an elimination program, 2025. So in my opinion, it is about strategic planning and narrowing down how to get rid of these people out of Congress and start from there. Because we're not going to be able to, we're not going to get back what they've already taken. And let's face it, how many Democrats have killed bills and healthcare for all out of California? And the Democratic Party has been promising a pathway to citizenship for over 30, 40 years, and they haven't given us anything. They're to blame to why all these ICE raids have been escalated this way. And let's not forget about the deporter in chief. Obama did it nicely, but he still deported a lot of workers. So my point is that we have to strategically plan on how to get rid of these people out of office and then start going back after our federal money. And it is my opinion, that there's two remaining programs left that's holding the fabric of this country together. Social Security and IHSS workers. And if we lose those programs, then you're going to see a revolution in this country. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Desiree. Powerful words. So we have a few more quick comments as we're getting ready to wrap up. Walda, did you want to get on stack?
No,
Nope.
I will yield to the hands that are up.
Okay. Rita.
Rita?
Rita, are you
I
on?
mean, Rita.
Sorry. I just want to push back a little bit on this notion that it was, poor white folks that brought us Trump, or that they, are problematic and not engaged. And a lot of the work we do in the South has rural components to it. And there's a great deal of organizing, relationship building, which is absolutely critical to building the trust that another young woman was talking about, Ashe, I think, earlier, is that, the struggle against fascism is also a struggle that will have to transform us. And in that transformation, we begin to lose some of the ideologies with which we're imbued. We begin to lose the holding on to individualism, to competition, to white supremacy, to all of these pillars that have held up the private property relationships that we're fighting against. Part of looking even at the electoral process is the amount of people who don't vote because they have no faith in either of the two political parties. As the sister before us was just speaking about, the Democratic Party set the basis to get us where we are today. So, all of the tools in our toolbox, from elections to bottom-up grassroots organizing to understanding who the class is. Class isn't really determined solely by, class is not determined by income, it's really determined by ownership, right? And as more and more people begin to experience this question of dispossession, I think we have tremendous opportunity to develop a revolutionary transformation if we have an understanding of what our vision is. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next I have Rosemary, and then we'll wrap it up with Jerome. Go ahead, Miss Rosemary.
Wow, I'm between two great people. Thank you, Rita, and thank you, Jerome.
That's three great people in a row.
Everything going on in LA has been incredible because, when you arrest and beat up the head of, you probably all know about the big ice raids yesterday, and then the president of SEIU, the California president, was beaten up and arrested. And we still had people up to midnight down in Chinatown planning the next steps. But this whole coalition that's been growing out nationally since May Day Strong, and the workers over billionaires, where they've actually, the goal is to reach 10 million workers in the South and Southwest, talk to them by Labor Day, and 1.5 million have already been reached. And these coalitions are coming up, like the fact that you had so many people doing May Day in the South, thousands of people, which is historic. And it's almost, that's like another stereotype, the rural South. But it's this broad coalitions that are being built, when working with the May Day people, now people working out around the King's Day parade, you see everybody in LA, just, community organizations, labor organizations, immigrant, it's just so wide. And people keep talking about revolutions in the air. We're building a future. They're not talking about reform. They're like building a future. What's it going to look like? And there's so much to plug into that way. And it's really been really inspiring. And right now, I mean, these ice raids, the goal is to arrest 3,000 people a day. That was announced by Stephen Miller, the other Stephen Miller. But there's so much going on, positive too, and just connecting with that, like that's what's, and I think a lot, the impulse came out of Chicago with the Chicago teachers and the kind of coalitions they've built, Working Families Party, et cetera. And it's inspiring. And it's one hell of a fight, and people are realizing it. But when you know, we've got everyone mobilized in LA right now.
That's good. Thank you, Rosemary.
You're
That's
welcome.
good to hear. It's hopeful.
Yeah.
Jerome.
Yeah, this has been a very fruitful conversation, and there's a lot that I could still talk about, but there's only a couple of things I want to say. One is that there's something that we all can do coming out of these discussions and other discussions that I know people are having, and that is we can carry these discussions on with people in our community, at our job, at our church, you know, wherever we congregate with other people. I think it's important to have the conversation of what are we faced with now and what can we do about it, like this conversation. So take this conversation with you and develop your own methods of delivering political education, education about what the real world has us facing right now. The, the other thing that I want to say is that, you know, I think that I mean, this is a two-front battle that we got. One, we got to defeat fascism, which means that, yes, we got to try to figure out a way to get people elected that will represent the working class and all that. And we got to carry on that fight and be involved in that fight. But the other fight that we have to carry on within that fight, people know, going back to when the Democrats were in charge, that was not a happy place. You know, that was not a place that we could say that we're thriving as a working class. You know, as a matter of fact, when you look at the history of this country, there's no point in the history of this country where a vast section of the working class wasn't under attack. You know, and so we can't just talk about defeating fascism and going back to that moment when fascism wasn't a present danger. We have to think about what can we do to make sure that we advance past that period. It goes back to this question of vision. What are we fighting for? We need to use this moment to fight to go toward a cooperative society and not back to that same old exploitive and oppressive capitalism, which fascism is also capitalism. We're not leaving capitalism now. It's just another state apparatus. You know, but we gotta get there, but we can't stop there. That's a tactic. We gotta implement a strategy that says we want to get to a point where we can save our environment, save our humanity, and advance ourselves toward a cooperative society. Pass.
Thank you. And that wraps up our discussion. So the last few pieces here. If you, either Peter or Hepzibah can put the evaluation link in the chat again, that would be great. So I encourage everyone to fill it out. You know, we
I'll do
welcome
that.
the
I think
feedback.
Hepzibah was on her phone, so I'll find that link.
Okay. I want to remind everyone again, this is a series. So the next conversation will be in July. You'll hear from us as to the date in July. And it's going to be on what does taking the working class offensive look like? We've just been talking about this to some degree of detail. Okay, why is this central to winning the class war? What does taking the working class offensive look like? And why is this central to winning a class war? So that will be the next conversation. In August, we will also have one on artificial intelligence and what does it mean for the revolution. Also, I want to invite anyone to contact us who wants to help with the next conversation, or if you have questions, you want to organize a study. We have tools. We are here to help because this is how we build. I also encourage people to invite your contacts, invite coworkers to the next conversation. You know, everyone has, you know, something to contribute, and we all learn collectively from each other. And then lastly, we welcome any support. It takes resources to deliver this type and other forms of education. Donations can be made through our website at learner.org, and we welcome that. And I thank everyone for coming. This has been a great conversation, and look forward to the next one. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day.
Thank you. Thank y'all.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. You did a wonderful job.
Facilitation. Great.
Hey, Kimberly.
Thank you, Joyce, Denise,
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Hey, everybody.
Thanks to so many
Walda,
people
thank you.
spoke. I'm really glad.
Peter.
And for a few people who didn't speak, there's next time.
There's next time.
This land is your land. This land is my land. From California, well, to the New York Island. From the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. I tell you, this land was made for you and me.